All right, on your notes, when we were taking the video notes, we ended with zero product property. I said we were going to address that, and we stopped. All right? So on these notes, we're going to pick up where we left off. Zero product property. And here's what the zero product property says. It says if A times B equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. So if you take two numbers and multiply them together and your answer is 0, then something had to be 0 in the problem. So you could have done like 5 times 0, 0 times 11, a million times 0, at least one of them is 0. Or both equal 0. So something equals 0 in the problem. And this is the property that we use to take equations. Equations have an equal sign in them. This is the property we use to take an equation and factor it and then solve the equation. All right, we use the zero product property. So here is example number 1. We are going to solve by factoring. That's what the instructions are going to say. They won't always tell you that your method of solving is factoring. Sometimes it will just say solve, period. But we're going to solve it by factoring. And the problem is x squared minus 3x minus 28 equals 0. So if we look at this, first we have to ask ourselves if there's a GCF we should take out. Do you guys see a GCF? No. Nope. Second question we have to ask ourselves is this a binomial or a trinomial? Is it 2 terms or 3? 3 terms. Then we have to say, is there a number in the front or not? There's not. So is this an easy problem or a slide divide? This is easy. So we're going to say we're looking for something that multiplies to negative 28 but adds to negative 3. Multiplies to negative 28, adds to negative 3. Yeah. 7 and 4. Then we got to have some signs in there, right? Anyone know what the signs should be? Negative 7. Okay. So that means what do we put in our parentheses? X minus 7, x plus 4. And so we factored the quadratic right here, and then over here we can say it equals 0. So how is this different than the factoring that we were doing 3 minutes ago?
It didn't equal.
We didn't have an equal sign. Now we do have an equal sign. So when you have a problem that doesn't have an equal sign, the most you can do is factor it, then you have to be done. You can't say anything else. If there's an equal sign, now we can start to say what the x value actually is. Right? So this is the point where we use the zero product property, because this right here says one number times another number equals 0. You guys see that? So this represents one number, this represents another number. So we have two options. It could be that the first one equals 0, or it could be that the second one equals 0, or it's possible that both of them equal 0 at the same time. All right? So we're going to go ahead and write down these two equations, and these two equations are how we're going to solve for x. So what do I do in this equation right here?
Add 7.
Add 7. So x equals 7. And what do I do in this equation here? Subtract 4. So x equals negative 4. And you should be remembering that. Are you guys remembering doing this before? What do you guys, when you typically did this, you probably didn't show your work. What did you probably do from the parentheses?
Flip the signs.
Yeah, flip the signs. And then you're good. So this is the math that you do to flip the signs. That's why flipping the signs works. But you don't have to show this math every time because it always works out the same, but it's just the opposite sign of what you saw in the parentheses. This is also why when we do transformations, the inside of the parentheses or the inside of the absolute value, like we looked at last unit, this is why you just change the sign of the inside, and if it says plus, you actually go left. And it's because of this right here. That makes sense? Okay. Example 2. We're going to do another one. So this one is going to be 10x squared minus 3x equals 8x plus 8.
So you're trying to figure out what both of the x's could be?
Yeah, so we're trying to solve for x, just like before.
But you just added all, so
Yeah.
it's on one side.
Yeah, my instruction should have said solve. What were you saying?
Don't we just add them all so they're all on one side?
Yeah, we need them to all be on one side because our method of solving is to do the zero product property. We can only do the zero product property if the equation equals 0. And this does not equal 0. So how do I make it equal 0? Yeah, move everything over. So I'm going to subtract 8x. And then I also have to subtract 8. So now the right side equals 0. And then what do I have on the left side? And then Katie, I think, is there a worksheet on that chair?
It's just the bingo.
Sorry, pause. What else do we have? Yeah, we got that negative 8. Okay. So if we look at this problem, first we ask ourselves, is there a GCF? Do you guys see a GCF? Nope. Second, is it 2 or 3 terms? 3. It's 3 terms. We have a number in front of the x squared. What does that mean? Slide divide. We're doing a slide divide. So I take the 10, I slide it over to the negative 8. What does that give me? Negative 80. So we are multiplying to negative 80 and adding to negative 11. Now this one, I don't know about you guys, but negative 80 for me is a little bit tricky. So what could I do in my calculator to make my life easier?
Y equals 180 divided.
Yeah, so in my y equals screen, I'm going to do negative 80 divided by x, and then look at the table. So let's go ahead and do that and then see what we come up with. Negative 16 and 5. Do we agree? That works? Yep. Okay, so what do we do now? Okay. All right, so we did the slide part. Now we have to do the divide part. Divided by 10. What do we do with those two fractions? We simplify them. So 16 over 10, 8 over 5. Okay, so we got x minus 8 over 5. And then what about this one here, 5 over 10? Okay, 1/2. So we did slide, we did divide, now we got to do bottoms up.
5x minus 8.
So 5x minus 8 and
2x plus 1.
okay. So are we done? We factored it, we're finished? No. What's our goal for this problem? Solve. So take them each and make them each equal 0. 5x minus 8 equals 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0. So what do I do in this equation to start solving for x? Add 8. So that gives me 5x equals 8. And then, what do we do next? Divide by 5. So x is 8/5. Now, if we look over at this problem before we did the bottoms up, what do you guys see?
It's the same.
It's the same as the previous problem, right? We just flip the sign, that's the answer. Okay. Any predictions on what this fraction is going to give us? Negative 1/2. And if you look at the problem and you actually solve it, we would minus the 1 over first. And then we would divide by 2. So we really are going to get negative 1/2. So x equals 8/5. X equals negative 1/2. And we're done. Now, before you put your notes away, we're going to add one thing to the bottom of the page. So put a star, we're going to highlight it, we're going to write it in bold, we're going to write it in capitals. What I want you to write is always keep the x squared term positive. The world won't explode if you don't. It's not like that level of concern, but it will make your life easier. All right? So keep the x squared term positive. That's because every single type of factoring we've done, if you guys have noticed, the first term has always been positive every single time. Did you guys notice that? We do that because we like to keep our life easy. So highlight it, underline it, do something so that you notice that. Okay? All right. Those are our notes.